Hey friends, welcome back to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn, and today I am so thrilled to have yet another amazing surgeon on my show. His name is Dr. David Light, and Dr. Light is a fellowship trained board certified plastic surgeon with a dual practice focused on breast reconstruction and aesthetic surgery. Dr. Light completed his plastic surgery residency at the Cleveland Clinic. He went on to the University of Pennsylvania and Fox Chase Cancer Center to complete a reconstructive microsurgery fellowship. Dr. Light's expertise includes microsurgical breast reconstruction techniques, including DIEP flaps, sensory restorations of the reconstructed breast, and delayed breast reconstructions. Dr. Light has authored numerous peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, and lectured on breast reconstruction nationally. He is a founding board member for breastreconstruction.org and serves on the American Cancer Society Long Island Board of Advisors. Well, Dr. Light, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited that we get to have this conversation. We did have a pre-conversation before, and I just felt like, we had a good connection. You were introduced to me through one of your surgeons. I'm one of your patients, and she spoke very, very highly of you. And I told her that one of my missions on my podcast, Test Those Breasts, is to seek out where all of the really amazing plastic surgeons and microsurgeons to boot. So how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. I too enjoyed our chat. I think that we're very like-minded and I've been looking forward to our talk tonight. So I think we're going to have some fun and hopefully share some information that's, useful to your audience.
That's awesome. That's exactly what we need. So my audience, most of my audience knows, sometimes they kind of skip around and don't know my full story, but my audience, a lot of them know that I had to have a double mastectomy. I was supposed to only have, my left breast removed, but I never knew that there were any such thing as autologous surgeries for breast
Hmm.
surgery. And in my hometown, I was going to the double mastectomy implant road, and I honestly really had a difficult time wrapping my mind around that. And I was very, very lucky to have three separate friends reach out to me and tell me, hey, I have a friend who went to this place and had this breast surgery where they use your own tissue. And I'm like, what? What on earth is that? I've never even heard of such a thing. And ultimately, I ended up canceling my surgery here in Reno and ended up going to another location. And everybody knows I went to, Center for Restorative Breast Surgery. But I also had heard that there was another place in, I want to say it's somewhere in Washington, D.C. And so those were the only two places that I'd ever heard. After I got that done, I realized I need to find where the other breast surgeons are, because a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their mind around going out of their area to have breast
Yeah.
surgery. So, so I have sought out several, and I've interviewed several on my podcast, some from Texas. I interviewed my own breast surgeon, Dr. Cabling, in New Orleans, but you're in New York. And so I'm excited that I have leapt to another state.
Welcome to the East Coast.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. And because I want people, and I'm going to house all of this information on my website once it's launched, so that people have an understanding of where all of the good surgeons are. And the only way that we know where the good surgeons are word of mouth from
Mhm.
patients. And so that is how I find all of you. So I would love to know who you are, what you do, how did you even get into this line of work? Let's just put it that way.
So my path was a little bit long and had a bunch of curves to it. I I I always thought that I would go to medical school. Always wanted to be a doctor. The idea of it was always sort of intriguing and thought it was a great profession. was pre-med is as an undergrad, and as I was finishing, I was like, I'm not sure if this is, I've had this idea in my head since I was a kid. I'm not sure if I'm doing it for the right reason. So let me take a few years off. I took a few years off in between college and med school, worked for a healthcare company, then actually worked for Lehman Brothers doing finance for a couple of years, and then went back to medical school. And I knew once I was in medical school that I was going to do something surgical. Initially, neurosurgery caught my eye and actually applied for a residency. Neurosurgery residency applications happen earlier than the other fields. And along the way, there was a few things that realized neurosurgery might be the not be the best fit for me. So then switched, went into general surgery. Thought I was going to be a vascular surgeon. I love the sort of complexity. I love the procedures. I love the finesse of it. But realized again, patient population sort of wasn't ideal for what I was looking for. I really wanted to, have highly successful procedures that, that that I would really enjoy doing. And so I sort of fell into plastic surgery and did my plastics residency at the Cleveland Clinic. And great programs, like 19 plastic surgeons on staff, did everything. So I was exposed to everything: hand, craniofacial, and just really took a liking to microsurgery. They had great microsurgeons there, and sort of just fell in love with it, and did a microsurgery fellowship at Penn, and then went into practice. I knew when I went into practice that I leaned more towards private practice, and so found the group that I'm currently in New York, NYBRA, New York Breast Reconstruction and Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. And my partners are basically, we're all like-minded. We all do basically the same thing. We all do a smattering of aesthetic surgery, and some more face, some more body, but then we all have very, very busy breast reconstruction practices. We're all microsurgeons. And so it just, the practice sort of clicked from both a procedural standpoint, as well as everyone was like-minded, and I really like the way that they practice. It's nice being in private practice because you still have control.
Mhm.
The way we see patients, who we hire, the sort of additional programs that we've added, like the patient empowerment program, to sort of support patients, not only from the technical aspect, but also socially and emotionally, I think is very unique.
Mhm.
And it's, our patients love it, and we love having, happy patients that are sort of in our family, so to speak, for years and years, even beyond when they've had their reconstruction.
That I just the mere fact that you just told me that about that program makes me so happy because that's not something that you find at all facilities.
Hmm.
It's you know not everyone values this idea of holistic care
Right.
and having the doctors involved in that holistic care with a full on whole body experience, because we know that you know women who have breast cancer who are told you have to get rid of your breast because they're
Hmm.
trying to kill you, um, that is something that's very difficult to wrap your mind around. I
A
definitely
hundred
went
percent.
into quite a depression, as a
Yep.
lot of people do. Um, and so and it always astounds me that I don't know about your practice, and you can let me know, but it is astounding that some of these procedures, even mastectomy and reconstruction, like with implants and things like that, is outpatient. It's really bizarre to me, and I was a little shocked about that, and I'm hoping that most places are kind of starting to change that, because when I went and got mine, I was in the hospital for 3 days and I felt like I was being well taken care of.
Hmm.
Now my second surgery, which was the revision, I was in there at least for one night, and if I
Hmm.
needed to stay another night, then I stayed another night. So just I love that. I want to talk more about that program because people who are considering coming to your facility that that is something that they would consider as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think our patients love it, and what we've learned, and I've learned along the way from sort of having the program and speaking to patients afterwards. To your point, the entire process of getting the diagnosis, trying to manage all of the decisions, like what type of surgery am I going to have? Am I going to do a mastectomy or a lumpectomy with radiation? What is chemo going to be like? How is that going to affect my body? How is it going to affect my relationships? If you have kids, worrying about, if you're going to be there for your kids and both the short term and the long term. And then even afterwards, very it's very common, I think, for women to they don't really wrap their heads around what has happened until 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months after surgery, because you're so preoccupied with making these decisions and sort of just next hurdle, overcome it, next hurdle, overcome it, that once things have sort of calmed down is when you can really process what actually just happened, which is, it's life shattering, life altering, and it's not only supporting the patient before surgery, but continuing to support them and provide resources afterwards.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because I was not expecting. It was 9 months after my first surgery. It was October of just this last year, September into October. I was realizing I was feeling really strange, and I had already started my podcast, and that was going really well, and all that. But I went through some PTSD, and I
Yeah.
figured out why. Yes, I'd gone through such a crazy whatever you want to call it. Um, I don't know. It's just all been so crazy. But October is a really interesting month for me.
Yeah.
October has always been my favorite month of the whole entire year. Why? Because number one, I was born in October. And the fall colors here, and I'm
Mhm.
sure in New York it's beautiful
Yeah.
too, but in Reno it's just insanely beautiful. My mother always loved October and the fall season, and then she goes and dies in October, right?
Oh,
So we have that was already difficult enough, and then I get breast cancer, and it's breast cancer
for
awareness month.
awareness
So
month. Yeah.
it's like all these things in October, and it's still my favorite month. So you mentioned that your facility is called in New York is called Breast Reconstruction and Aesthetic Plastic Surgery, NYBRA. And like New York bra. I mean, that's really clever. Who came up with that?
It it sort of was, it pre-existed in another form, and the practice actually was originally called aesthetic plastic surgery PC, and then we had NYBRA as a second thing, and we were, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, or like, this doesn't make sense, we sort of have two names and are living like an alter ego here, so we just went with the NYBRA and changed it a little bit to include the aesthetic part, and it sort of, it fits, and it's sort of, you can abbreviate it. It's NYBRA. It's got the bra in it, which is sort of a cute play. It has New York, so it so far
I
it's
love
worked.
it. It's
Yeah.
perfect. I was like looking at the going, oh, I just noticed that. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Well, on your website, it says with decades of collective experience, cutting edge surgical expertise, and a commitment to whole patient well being, we're ready to support you at every step. You already told me pretty much what that means to you with that holistic care. I just think that, having that piece in there and even knowing people who have gone there, it makes it more appealing to
Hmm.
go there, and having all the doctors and the staff and faculty, everybody on board with that, and having these programs. What other programs do you have? Is there anything else that you can share that kind of fits into that?
Sure. So the program that we have, it was actually developed by Mollie Sugarman, who's still to this. She sort of founded it and still runs it as the clinical director, and she provides a number of different services. She's got a number of different support groups. So support groups for women with metastatic cancer, for women with genetic mutations, um, for she's actually got a spouse support group as well. So there's multiple different support groups for different patients with different diagnosis, because the sort of their experience and their basically their experience is a little bit different depending on the diagnosis. She does guided imagery to help calm patients prior to surgery. She will introduce current patients to previous patients who had the same procedure, so that the patient, it can be a patient to patient discussion, so they have a little bit more of an understanding of, we can provide them the clinical information, but the patient can provide, I think, very valuable insight as well. And so, and that the support groups and everything continue on. She has patients that are in her support groups that have been coming for 15, 20 years.
Okay. Dr. Light, can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay, I just had a little technical situation, but not a big deal, and we can edit this part out.
No.
I think that's amazing, and to have somebody who, somebody who can help with helping people who are looking into coming to your facility know exactly what kind of things
Yeah.
they'll be supported with. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, what we realized is that we're very good at the technical part, and when we meet a patient, we're so focused on getting the medical history, doing a physical exam, making sure that we're explaining all of the options and educating the patient on the reconstructive aspect to it. But we usually don't have the time to get into, like, well, what's home like? What kind of support are you going to have afterwards? Who's going to help you with surgery afterwards? Who's going to be home? What are the other stressors in your life right now? What are the other challenges? Is now the right time to have a larger procedure like a deep flap, or are there other issues that we need to sort of manage and resolve, so that you don't come home from a procedure and don't have the help that's needed? And so the Mollie and the program is excellent at sort of filling in that gap in the care that usually surgeons are not experts at doing.
I I I really love that, because that goes along with one of the questions I wanted to ask you about this idea of shared decision making.
Mm-hmm.
I know that term, and we talked about this before. That term I learned from another, from actually Dr. Crisopolo.
Mm-hmm.
I had never heard it before, but that shared decision making is kind of a term that was sort of coined back in the 80s, and that it was this idea of doctor and patient sitting down together and talking about what might be best for them, and just asking those questions, like what's going on at home, kind of really digging into, how this is going to affect the patient,
Right.
and giving them options on how, what they can do and to remedy certain things, is just, to me, is a no-brainer.
Right.
But I know that not
Yeah.
all doctors are like that. They're kind of like, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, and whatever. And there are patients alike that will be like, you know what, I trust my doctor, and which is fine.
Yeah.
There's a myriad of different reasons why you're going to trust your doctor, of course, um, but just having sitting down and having that conversation with the doctor, and feeling like, hey, this guy really cares for me, or this girl really cares for me, this doctor, um, and and actually even going and getting a second opinion is fine
Mm-hmm.
too.
Absolutely.
And
Always encourage
because,
it.
I think that any doctor who actually encourages it is great, because in the end, the patient is going to go into that surgery uh, more
More
compliant
comfortable.
and
Yeah.
understanding it better, and feel better about themselves. And I just had this conversation with one of my friends here in Reno, She chose a certain route, and
Mhm.
she researched as much as she could, and she feels really good going into the surgery that she decided on. And I said, that is exactly what people need to do.
Right.
Honestly, look at their
Yeah.
options and then go from there.
Yeah. I mean, I think shared decision making is a little bit of of an older term, but I think it's still accurate and it's still in sort of our common vernacular. You know, if you go back 30, 40, 50 years, patients used to just walk into their doctor's office and it was a little bit more of a paternalistic approach where the
Mhm.
physician would just say, okay, this is what we're going to be doing. And there wasn't as much sort of questioning of the doctor. It was sort of, you listened to what they had to say, you took their advice and you just went with it. And there's still a little bit of an element of that as far as taking the advice. But I think that the world is a different place. There's a tremendous amount of information at everyone's fingertips. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not, but it allows patients to begin to educate themselves. And then I think it's our job to review all of those options, make sure the patient understands it. And I usually try and start off sort of just presenting the data. What are the pluses of doing an implant reconstruction? What are the pluses of doing an autologous reconstruction? And allowing the patient to sort of get a feel for what's right for them. And to your point, doing a little bit of a deeper dive. This is what it's like to 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road to have this reconstruction. This is what it's like to live with it. This is what it's like, this is how it might affect your activities, your daily living, whatever it may be. And that really gives them the opportunity to sort of pick what's right for them. And
Right.
when a patient does that, they're just so much more comfortable with their decision and going into surgery. There's just a sense of, you know, tranquility that, this is the right thing for me.
Yeah, and my biggest mission is to make sure that people understand there are options.
Right.
I didn't know I didn't even know that, and so I don't want I want people to understand, and I would love for all doctors to say, "Hey, this is another option. I don't do this, but you might want to look into this," or something like
Right.
that. That would be the perfect world. It's interesting that you mentioned that kind of patriarchal type system where I don't know if you ever saw the movie Maestro. So
No, I did
there's
not.
there's a scene in there where this woman and her husband are sitting in the office at the doctor's office, and the doctor comes in and he sits down in his chair. He's got wheels on the chair and he rolls up to the bed, and both husband and wife are sitting there. Rolls up to the bed and says, "So you have breast cancer, and here's what we're going to do. We are going to take your breasts, and we are going to and we're going to do mastectomy, and then we're going to do chemo." And he's telling all the things that they're going to do, and they're sitting there going, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my god!" And that was it. And that was like
Yeah.
exactly what they're going to do, and no
Probably
talking. Say,
rolled back out and went on to the next patient.
yeah,
Whole
yeah.
whole whole visit probably took 3 minutes, and
I
left
mean,
a very
I got a
yeah.
little triggered there. I was like, no, no. But and to be fair, it took place back in the 80s. So
There you go.
so traveling to another state to get the mastectomy, reconstruction, and all that. How can we put people at ease
Hmm.
traveling? Because one of the things that my surgeon said here was, "Hey, I haven't heard much about that type of surgery, but my biggest concern is that there's no local care." And
Hmm.
at first, I was kind of like, "Okay, well, that makes sense. Of course you want local care." But then I found out later that I called up the center, and they said, "Well, we're a real world-renowned hospital, so we have people coming from all over the world, including like Australia,
Hmm.
and we do have connections with." Medical, centers in everywhere. And so I and like that put me more at ease. And because at first I was thinking to myself, Well, you wouldn't have heart surgery here in Reno. You would go somewhere else to get that,
Right,
right? And then, of course, when you come back, there's local care. You would be
right,
able to go to the hospital if there's an infection or whatever. How
right.
do you put people at ease? Because we still, on Facebook groups, because we talk about you doctors, by the way, um, and and people ask all the time, it's like, oh my God, I don't know, like going out of town to do this.
Yeah.
How do we put people at ease?
So the you know people are who are traveling for reconstruction, they're usually traveling for an autologous, a natural tissue reconstruction like a DIEP flap. There's usually you can find a plastic surgeon in your community to do an implant reconstruction. It's
Mhm.
fairly doesn't require a fellowship training. It's sort of bread and butter plastic surgery. Um, so, and the nice thing about a DIEP flap is that although there is a recovery period to it, the critical part where we're really monitoring the flap is really for the first 24 hours or so. The vast majority of the problems that you have, and they're exceedingly rare, less than 1% of the time, with like a free flap or like a DIEP flap, occur in the first few hours after surgery. By the time the patient goes home, and usually we send patients home on the second day after surgery. Um, not really worried about it. I usually have patients stick around for about a week or so just to manage their drains and try and get those out before they depart home. After they arrive at home, I'm not worried about the flap anymore. I'm not worried about viability. So the only really issues that you can run into seven, between sort of 7 and 28 days is maybe there's a little bit of a superficial infection. Maybe you develop a little bit of a fluid collection called a seroma. Um, those are issues that happen with every single procedure we do, whether it's a breast reconstruction, a tummy tuck, a breast reduction, facial plastic surgery. So all of these issues can really be managed by, you know, any plastic surgeon. It sort of gets back into the bread and butter. And similarly, we have friends and colleagues throughout the country, and even when we don't, I usually get on the phone with the patient's sort of the plastic surgeon that they may have seen originally. And if they're not familiar with the procedure that we've done, bring them up to speed. And then managing whatever issue, minor issue there is really not a big deal. And
Yeah.
so, I have right now I'm actively taking care of patients in Ohio and New Mexico and Florida. And so they're, either they're doing totally fine or they've gone back to follow up with their plastic surgeon there and, just are more comfortable having a physician, see them. And they're also flying back to me to have periodic follow up as well. So I think that, the critical time after, say, a DIEP flap is really the first few days. And once patients head back home, there's really no specialized care that's really required anymore.
Yeah, that was my experience. So, I mean, I
Mhm.
stayed in the hospital and then I was there for a whole week because of course I was waiting for pathology too. And then when I went back there, I got a couple drains removed and then made it back home. And traveling, I got enough advice on how to travel that was really helpful. And also having a caregiver with you, of course, is
Yeah,
really important. And
definitely
when I
help.
got home, I actually did get a little wound. They called it a wound
Hmm.
in my incision. And so they called it an antibiotic. And then I
Hmm.
had to get some gel. And I just put the gel on and took the antibiotic, and it was gone. And that was the
Yeah,
only thing that ever even happened with me.
right. And
So,
that's
yeah.
that's sort of like the simple run of the mill things that can happen, and
Hmm.
most of the issues, resolve on their own and can be managed just by conversation. And sometimes it might require a visit to a local plastic surgeon, but that's exceedingly rare.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm putting together a website for my nonprofit and categorizing a bunch of resources so that people can click on it, like what to bring to the hospital, how to
Mhm.
travel, anything that I can to put under whatever category so people can have it at their fingertips for free, and just learn from it. And
Yeah,
I just feel like it would really shorten the learning curve for a lot of people.
100%, especially those who, may be traveling from a place where there isn't a major breast reconstruction center. There might not be support groups locally, and
Mhm.
so they're scrambling. They're online. They're trying to get information from, Facebook groups, and so any resource where it's the patient sort of giving tips and pearls of what made the first week, 2 weeks, month, 3 months easier. What did you find helpful? What wasn't helpful? Like for example, we have a local pharmacy that rents. It's almost like a lazy boy chair
Mm,
that's mechanical and will
yeah.
help you stand up. And so we refer patients to them, and it's inexpensive to rent one of these chairs. And most of our patients will rent it, which just helps them get up and move around. Some of them even sleep in it. They find it
Mhm.
like very comfortable. And so, little pieces of information like that that just make it so much more, pleasant and easy, rather than
Yeah.
experimenting and having everyone learn, the hard way every single time.
Right, and was literally just working on a list.
Hmm.
One of my breasties sent me the list that of things that is really good to bring to the hospital, and if you're traveling, stay keeping at the Airbnb or hotel or whatever.
Yeah,
And one of those items on there was to rent in the area one of those lazy boy type chairs. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk insurance.
Okay.
I know this is really fun, but it's so important. That's another resource that I have two of my friends working on to put
Hmm.
together, how to navigate and understand insurance. But patients have a challenging time actually navigating their options, especially when it comes to insurance. I know that not, some facilities accept certain insurance and some don't. What are your thoughts about that? And how can patients advocate for themselves to get the care from the surgeon they
Hmm.
most want to go to?
Yeah. So I think that mo- the institutions, the hospitals that we operate, they accept most insurance. So it's usually not the hospital that's the issue. It's the physician may accept some plans, not all plans, and so the insurance, you need an entire education just on
Yeah.
insurance to understand it, and it's very confusing, and patients don't understand like deductibles and co-insurance and how
Mhm.
they're calculated. And so we actually have an entire authorization department. There's a number of people that work in it for our practice, and they will walk patients through everything. And some of them have been doing it for over 25 years and are really experts in advocating for patients for breast reconstruction.
Good. I
But
like that.
yeah, and it's sort of, you need that hand holding to get you through it. If you're in a situation where there's a doctor that you found and you're comfortable, and maybe they don't accept your insurance, it doesn't mean that that's where the conversation stops. Especially if you're traveling from a location that doesn't have a surgeon in the area to actually perform your procedure. You have some rights. There's the Women's um, Health and Cancer Right Act, uh,
Yes.
that basically states that your um, not only does the mastectomy, but the reconstruction needs to be covered as well, including all stages. And if, for example, you had a reconstruction on one breast, the symmetry procedure on the other breast would be reconstructed. So options for breast reconstruction, that needs to be offered for the patient, and it's the patient's decision on which option they choose. And so if there isn't a microsurgeon in your immediate area and you have to travel, and maybe it's a plan that they don't accept, there still can be a conversation. That's not where you should give up. The surgeon's office will hopefully advocate for you the way ours does. And then you can also advocate for yourself. And this is, there can always be a discussion, and it happens to us all the time. There are plans that aren't even offered in our local New York area, where a patient is coming from the Midwest to the West Coast. And we simply contact the insurance company, explain the situation, and are able to get coverage. We're missing your sound.
There we go. There,
There we go.
can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
There's one part in the document that I was just talking about, that we want to be able to help walk people through how to appeal a
Hmm.
denial, by using the verbiage that's used in the denial letter.
Hmm.
Because I know a long time ago, I watched a documentary about insurance companies and how a lot of the employees are trained to deny first, deny first. And so, I mean, I had that happen firsthand when I developed a really rare anemia during my chemo. We
Hmm.
didn't know it was a rare anemia. We thought it was just an iron deficiency, but it turned out to be a completely different type of anemia. But I got a letter in the mail that I was denied the blood transfusion that I had to have because it wasn't, in a hospital stay, because it
Yeah.
wasn't life threatening, when actually it was. So
Yeah.
we had to appeal it and got it back. So that was my first time ever having to deal with that. But some people just give up. They're like, oh, I was denied.
Yeah.
And I always want to say, no,
Yeah.
you
It's
need to
so
appeal.
it's not you can always appeal, and it's we definitely have our share of problems with insurance companies and denials, and sometimes you scratch your head and you're like, I can't believe this is I'm actually reading this, and they're actually denying it, and sometimes the denial is actually illegal. It's literally breaking the law. But sometimes you just have a person on the other side that doesn't have any experience. You would love to get a medical director who reviews it, who's a former plastic surgeon and understands exactly the verbiage and what's happening. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a retired nephrologist who
Mhm.
doesn't really, they're sort of doing their best. And if you have a conversation with them, there's something that doctors can do called a peer to peer. And so
Yes.
when there's depending on the type of denial, sometimes it has to be a written appeal, in which case we will write a letter, basically explaining, why we think there was an error made, and try and get it overturned. And sometimes you can do a peer to peer. So I will actually get on the phone with the medical director and sort of walk them. They'll tell me why it was denied, and I'll clarify why I think that's incorrect. And there are many times where they're like, okay, didn't realize what exactly you were doing, and so they'll overturn it. And so it's another hoop to jump through. It's another hurdle. It can be certainly disappointing when
Mhm.
you get that letter and like, oh my god, now what am I going to do? But don't give up so easily. I
Good.
think that's
Great
the moral
advice.
of the story.
It just can be stressful. You're going through cancer,
100%.
you have to get rid of your boobs, and then you have to, I mean,
Yeah.
and then this, right?
And
So,
sometimes it all takes care of itself in the final hours, like days and
yep.
even hours. Like I've even taken patients to the operating room without having an authorization yet, just because I'm not going to cancel their surgery tomorrow. They have a diagnosis of cancer, and there's some ridiculous you know denial that I know is going to get appealed, and we just sort of move forward, take care of the patient, and then figure it all on the back end. So that's
Uh,
not an ideal situation, but it happens from time to time.
Yeah, no, but I mean, just the mere fact that you would do that, is just that speaks volumes. Actually, just the mere fact that you would do that.
Oh,
Deep flap, we almost lost um, access to that. I didn't find out about that until after my first surgery. I just kind of went in, did my surgery, and then after I came out, I was like, what? We almost lost
yeah,
access, and it was still going on because I had
yeah,
mine in 2022. How were you involved with the advocacy for that?
yeah. So there was some work by the ASPS, and some microsurgeons as well, headed up by Dr. Potter
Yeah.
in Texas, and so we were supporting those efforts as well. what the insurance companies were trying to do was remove what's called an S code. So there's a specific code for deep flaps. There's another code, which is a CPT code which really originated from tram flaps. So it's a breast reconstruction free flap code, but it's sort of all comers. It can include, like a full muscle tram flap, which is an easier operation and takes less skill than doing a perforator flap like a deep flap. And so the S code was a way to basically identify that a more difficult procedure was performed, and so the reimbursement for that S code was greater than the CPT code. And so there was an attempt to sort of remove the S code and just have one code, like a catch-all, code for all microsurgical free flaps, whether it's a full muscle tram flap or a deep flap or a pap flap. And so that could dramatically change surgeons' ability to offer the surgeries, especially in private practice, because offering a deep flap, it might actually be a money losing sort of procedure for the surgeon. So to give up, the majority of your day to do a surgery that doesn't even cover the cost of your staff, the PA who's helping you, would make it hard for a surgeon to continue to do a high volume of deep flap and offer that to many patients. And so luckily the final decision was sort of postponed, but it's, we're not out of the woods completely.
No, and that's why I like to bring awareness through these podcasts for women to pay attention.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what's happening with women's health, and pay attention to what's happening with, like your breast health and all of that stuff, and what's going on with, insurance companies. And I'm just so glad that I found out about that, because I did get involved, and that's how I connected with Dr. Potter. And I'll put her episode link in our show notes so that people can kind of refer back to that, because I know that she worked her tail off on that. And I know quite a few people did.
I commend her. She really sort of, took it on, and, was a real grassroots effort, and put a lot of work into, raising awareness and postponing the final decision.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because some of those people that were making the decisions, probably they didn't know the difference between a trans flap and a deep flap. I mean, it's like compromising the muscle, not compromising the muscle. Right. Yeah.
All you need to do is talk to a few patients that have had, well-performed deep flaps, where not only the muscle was preserved, but the nerves to the muscle was preserved. So you have a completely functional abdominal wall. You can,
Yep.
You can sit up normally, you can do crunches, and then speak to a few people who have had bilateral tram flaps, where they don't have any rectus muscle, no six-pack muscle. And so, when you watch them get out of bed, it's more like a log roll, where they're using their oblique muscles on the side to try and compensate, cannot do sit-ups, cannot do, they really lose a lot of their core function. And it's a totally different sort of way of life, and your function afterwards is really quite different.
And you can't get that back. I mean,
There's no way to train and get it back. There's no way to compensate for the loss of those muscles.
Yeah, I went to yoga today and did quite well with my abs.
Awesome.
I've got some strong core muscles. Okay, so I have a couple more questions before we go. Breast cancer has proven to be an incredibly emotional journey for so many women. In your experience, how have surgeries such as deep flap changed the trajectory of their lives, like these patients' lives? I mean, do you hear back from a lot of them, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that I think patients and multiple studies have shown this. People have used what's called the BreastQ, which is a validated survey that looks at there's different modules. So there's like a sexual well-being, many different aspects of the patient's life. And natural tissue autologous reconstructions like deep flaps score very highly with satisfaction across, almost every category. And so I think patients are overwhelmingly happy. Patients will say that, especially patients that had implants and then switched to DIEP flaps, they'll, common things that they'll say is, the implant never felt quite like me. The DIEP flap feels like me. And there's just sort of a tremendous um, sense of self. Like I feel normal. It feels like me. It's warm. It's soft. It moves like a natural breast. And so I think that has a tremendous impact on someone's, well-being and just sort of emotional state where they're not there isn't certain activities during the day that reminds them that they've had a breast reconstruction or breast cancer or whatever it may be. The goal is really to sort of move on, get to a place of sort of comfort and um, just you know feeling good about oneself without the constant reminders that something happened. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure when any woman who has a DIEP flap gets undressed and they see the abdominal scar, that's a little bit of a reminder. But sometimes that's a silver lining as well if they were happy that their abdominal contour changed. So I think overall, patients are very happy, and it's one of the reasons why I love doing the procedure. I know that a couple of weeks later after a DIEP flap, that patient is good for life. That whatever I did for them, if it's soft and healthy, then it'll remain soft and healthy, and they're going to be, comfortable and can sort of put all of this behind them and move on. We lost your audio again.
Technical problems. I will say that for sure, it is hard to wrap your mind around. Will I ever feel good about my body again? What is this going to look like a year down the road, 2 years down the road? And I will say that hearing people ask those questions now who have just been diagnosed or, are just going into surgery and wondering the same thing. I can attest that is exactly why I didn't want to have implants. I wanted to have something natural, and I do feel good about my body. Somebody asked me the other day, "Are you happy? And are you happy with your body?" It was actually a sex therapist that I interviewed, and she deals with people with cancer and helping couples get that connection again and all of that. And I said, I am. And I do feel good about myself. And even though I do see the scars, I still feel good about myself. I don't feel bad looking in the mirror. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and that's exactly what any surgeon wants their patient to feel. It's you sort of asked me in the beginning why plastic surgery? How did I get to this route? What really attracted to me to especially breast reconstruction, it had the technical aspect to it, but unlike other specialties where you make someone better, but they may still have ongoing issues or other challenges. Breast reconstruction is a highly successful operation that has a very high patient satisfaction, and so it's just it's a beautiful thing to do all day every day because you're going to have happy patients 99% of the time, and even if there's some hiccups along the way, there's always options, there's always ways to make things better.
Well, you can tell that you really are passionate about doing what you do. Do you do how many of these DIEP flaps do you do every week?
It varies. Sometimes it's two, sometimes it's four.
Okay. Yeah. I always tell people, ask your doctor, ask surgeons. Do they do this all the time? Are they a microsurgeon? Because
Hmm.
that's really important, right?
It is. It's a longer procedure, but as with anything, the more you do it, the more efficient and comfortable you get at it. So, you definitely don't want someone who dabbles in it. You don't
Yeah.
want someone who does it like once a month or once every other month. It's just not enough to sort of get that groove. And our practice, because there's 5 busy microsurgeons, we have PAs who are experts in helping us as well. Some of them have been doing it for 17 years plus, And so, the staff and the support that goes into this, it's now a well-oiled machine, but it took years to get there. And
Hmm.
so, and there's, other practices, you've interviewed many of them, that are the same way, that because the volume is so high, it's smooth, it's, usually seamless. And, like with any surgery, little things come up, but when you do hundreds of them a year, the little things are normal, and
Hmm.
they're put in the rearview mirror very quickly. They're taken care of, and usually the patient doesn't even realize anything happened. Whereas when you're not doing them very often, little things in a long procedure can build up. And now I hear patients who have found me online, and they're like, oh, someone in their Facebook group said that this is a 12-hour or 14-hour or 18-hour operation. And that should not be that way.
No. Do you work with somebody, do you do these on your own, or do you have a team that works on it, on each
um,
surgery?
so it's a mix. Sometimes it will be two surgeons, and sometimes it's just a surgeon with one or two PAs.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, to wrap up, you've given us so much advice anyway. Is there any, and maybe you've thought about this, what is one big piece of advice you would give when it comes to awareness about breast surgery options?
So I think, do your homework, and don't settle. So if you go for a consultation and you're not 100% comfortable, go for a second consultation. To we as we discussed before, if you hear two surgeons say the same thing to you, you have a comfort level that, okay, I'm on the right path. If you have two surgeons who say vastly different things to you, then you might want to get a third opinion, just sort of as a tiebreaker, so to say. But keep investigating, keep researching until you get to a comfort level with your decision and with your medical team. In this day and age, just as we're doing now, having a Zoom visit, having a telemed visit is a great way to start, even if you're, out of town. That's usually how I meet all of my out of
Oh.
town patients initially. And so it's also a great way for the patient to see my face, see my
Hmm.
approach, get a flavor for my personality, to see if, okay, is this worth getting, in a car or on a plane to come and see this doctor, or do I want to look for someone else? And so, I think that because of technology and the information that's out there, patients should be their own advocate, should keep doing consultations until they have a comfort level, and then move forward with a procedure that they're happy with.
I
Um,
like it. And I like that you meet with them online too,
yeah,
because that's always nice. Because I've had people say, well, I really want to go to such and such, but I have to go there to do a consult.
yeah,
And so that makes it a lot easier.
yeah.
And
I always see patients in person before I operate
Mhm.
on them, but the
Right.
initial consultation, can be a chat online, and
Mhm.
can really help to even, the physical exam is really the final deciding factor for what's the best option for you. But you can get a pretty good flavor for, what you're dealing with just by having a conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I have your contact information that I'll have on the show notes. You're on Instagram. You have a LinkedIn tree, link tree. Sorry, there's LinkedIn and Linktree. And then also, I have a link on there to book a consult with you. And then I have your website on there for NYBRA, NYBRA.com, and breastreconstruction.org. Those are the ones I have in the show notes.
Mhm.
I just want to thank you for taking your time and shedding some light on all of this. I don't know if anybody's ever said that to you, but
Once or twice.
I thought I would just get it in there.
I
And
like it.
yeah, I'm so excited that now I know someone in New York, and I have another option for people out there that I can include on my website, and they can listen to this podcast and reach out to you. So, Dr. Light, thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with before we disconnect?
No, I just wanted to thank you for having me. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and thank you for doing what you do. I think that organizations like yours are a resource for patients to do all of the research that they need prior, so that they have a better understanding of what their options are. So, the more that we talk about it and the more resources that are out there means that there are patients that are actually, getting the information that they need and hopefully having the surgery that they want and that they're comfortable with.
Yeah, love it. That is my whole goal, is to really help shorten the learning curve.
Yeah,
And I know it's working because people do reach out to me, people I don't even know, and say, "Hey, I ran across your
yeah.
podcast, and
Isn't that
because
amazing?
of your because of your podcast, I know what I'm going to do for my surgery." And so
Awesome.
I know it's working. Well, thank you very much for that. And I just wish you all the best, and I hope you have a wonderful summer out there. And to my audience, thank you once again for joining me on this episode of Test Those Breasts. We will see you next time. Bye
Thank you.
for now.
Bye bye.